All right. Hello, everybody. This is Flea Market Fantasy number 14. This is your co-host, Mike L. And as always, I'm joined by...
Michael Dell of the LCS Hockey Radio Show.
That's right. And this week is my pick. And I decided to go back to the very first comic book that Michael Golden ever drew. And if you don't know who Michael Golden is, we'll talk about him later. But he's one of my favorite artists. And we picked Batman number 295, drawn by Michael Golden and written by Gerry Conway. That's pretty much it. I've never read this story before. I know that you're not a big DC fan, but you have read some Batmans, right?
Yes, in my childhood.
Yeah. So what's your initial impression going into this comic before even reading it? Were you hesitant?
Yes.
Why? Just because it said DC on the cover?
And it's one of your picks. If anything, boy. I've learned over the 14 weeks of doing this podcast, your picks are terrible. Every week they're terrible.
Except this time, right?
No. All right. So this is.
Oh boy. Okay.
Michael, at times like these, Michael, it's good that we're recording this show in separate countries.
Oh yeah.
Because if you were anywhere in the continental United States, I would drive to your location and punch you right in the jeans.
In the jeans, eh?
Yep.
Oh boy,
this is terrible. All right.
I have a lot to say, and it's all good. Okay, go ahead.
All right, this is from 1978, and the title. This title will let you know what you got ahead of you. The Adventure of the Houdini Whodunit.
Yeah, awesome. But you know what's even better? What about the pun on the cover?
Yes, let's talk about the cover. Describe the cover image for everybody, Michael.
So this is drawn by Jim Aparo. We have Batman jumping towards someone holding a flaming sword, and he's about to impale a girl with it. And as Batman's jumping, he's saying, "Back off, Batman, or this magic show becomes a tragic show."
It's terrible.
See what he did there? It's great.
Yeah, it's clearly like a magician because his face is shaded because it's a mystery. Right. You don't want to know who it is. But there's a lady floating, so it's kind of like a magic trick. And her chest is towards the camera.
Superhuman, yeah.
And she is stacked.
Yes, she is. Yeah. Defying gravity.
So I think you got to give the kids what they want. And I don't know. This cover. Yikes. I'm a big fan of dialogue. I'm a big fan of the dialogue balloons on covers, but yeah, magic show becomes a tragic show. That's
bad, yeah.
Yeah, that's real bad.
Now, apparently, the editors usually are the ones that wrote that cover copy, so we should blame, who's the editor? Julius Schwartz. So there you go. We'll blame him.
And then on the next page here, the big splash page, we get a description of Batman and what's going on here. But we see on the left side of the page, we have 5 little boxes of people's faces. And they introduce the different characters.
Right.
We have David Hampton, the Angry Magician. Glenn Falkenstein, the Mysterious Mentalist. Martin Monroe, the Ambitious Apprentice. Lisa Morrow, the Sultry Psychic.
I love it all, yeah.
She doesn't really look very sultry. Winston Bennett, the Taciturn Manager.
I don't even know what taciturn means, but anyway.
Stern.
Okay.
Not quiet, stoic, stern.
Okay.
All right. So then on the right side of the page, we have Batman, who his back is to the camera, and his hands are chained behind him, and he's in a water tank. And then there's a man in the shadows. And what does he say to Batman, Michael?
Even Houdini himself couldn't have escaped this death trap, Batman. For interfering with my plans, I condemn you to die.
Yes.
So this is essentially another cover, right? It's like we talked about. DC kind of had two covers.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because when we did that Brave and the Bold, we mentioned this as well.
Yeah.
It's weird. Why were they doing this?
I really have no idea. Honestly, I don't.
Because this splash page, it jumps ahead, it ruins what's going to happen. I guess you could say it teases it that Batman's going to end up in this tank. But yeah, then the next page, completely unrelated to this splash page.
Yeah, it's weird because Marvel has always had splash pages, but the splash page was just the first panel of the story. It was just really big. But yeah, this is like another cover. I don't really know why they did that, to be honest. I have no idea.
And well, two other things I want to talk about.
Okay.
Right at the over there on the right side, you see created by Bob Kane, real big.
Right.
Kane. No Bill Finger anywhere.
No, I think Bob Kane. He was the only guy that had the contract where he kept his name on the character forever.
Yep. But the other thing, Micah, you've made 7 picks. All right, 7 picks for this podcast so far. In 2 of them, there have been people trapped in a Houdini water torture trick.
Well, hey, if a trope works, then you use it, right? Why not?
But what is going on at DC? That we've had 2 random issues with Houdini water. The other one was Mr. Miracle that you had picked, where he was stuck in a water torture thing.
This is a good question.
What the hell, Michael?
Now, if we hit 3 times, we'll know there's a problem. But for now, it's just a coincidence.
Okay. Yeah. It's just a coincidence. It's not a pattern. All right. So now we get chapter 1, a riddle. The story's divided into 3 chapters.
Yes.
Why don't you explain the plot for everyone, Mike?
So, okay, first of all, before I even get into this, the interesting thing about this comic for me, and one of the reasons it's so good, is because it's almost impossible to summarize the plot without describing like every panel.
No, so, it's real easy to summarize the plot.
Oh, you think so, eh? You think so?
It's not that hard.
Okay. Well, I'll do my best here. So Batman intervenes on a sort of a typical, Batman-ish crime. There's 3 hoodlums with guns. He beats them up. And then once he's dealt with them, he rendezvous with Commissioner Gordon, who's come to the scene of the crime to talk to him about something that's going on. And so basically he explains that there's been a murder and blah, blah, blah. And so then he has to go and talk to this group. And this is what's weird is I don't know if this group are recurring characters or not. I'm not sure if you found that out, but they talk to them as if they're recurring characters.
Yeah, maybe I was going to ask you because I figured you would know. But tell everybody their name. The
mystery analysts of Gotham City.
The mystery analysts of Gotham City. Yeah, this is a club apparently that Batman hangs out in. And we have, do you want to go through the members here?
Sure. We have K-Day, Martin Tellman, and Art Satos.
Well, K-Day is a best-selling mystery novelist.
Yes.
And then Martin Tellman continues to solve crimes as an armchair detective. So that's always helpful. Art Satos, he still produces the best crime investigation column in any newspaper. Yeah. And
also, this is during a time when, Batman was kind of in between the Adam West version and like the movie version. So he's like got his blue costume and he's just standing there and not broad daylight, but he's just standing there with all these other guys chatting.
Yeah, he's just hanging out with all these other folks. And well, the one kid, the armchair detective, he says, too bad Hugh Ranklin couldn't be here.
Yeah.
Who's Hugh Ranklin? Like, do you know who that is?
No, I have no idea. Now, I have no clue. So here's the thing. I've read scattered issues of Batman from this era, but not many. And this was Gerry Conway's first issue. So
yes,
it's possible he just introduced these characters here. I have no idea.
I don't know. I would have to think this has to be an ongoing thing.
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah. This is the part of the show where we Google things.
Yeah. Do you want to Google it? You want me to Google it?
Well, I already got one of the pages caught up here. So let me see. Mystery. Oh, no, this is the mystery analyst of Gotham City's final appearance.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay. So
thank God.
His history.
Well,
they left you wanting more, right? That's the way to do it.
Their first appearance was on Batman 164.
Whoa. Okay.
From June 1964. Former members included, let's see, besides the people already mentioned, Clark Kent and Jimmy Olsen was an honorary.
Okay.
I want to see who Hugh Ranklin is. Let me click on his name or Hugh Rankin, because they seem very concerned that Hugh Rankin isn't there. So I'm almost thinking like maybe this is a superhero or something. But he was a private investigator. Yeah, that's it.
Sold. I love it.
I was
What's
thinking
that?
that might be a secret identity, like Hugh Rankin, and then he's a superhero, and they didn't know. But no, just a private investigator. Oh,
So
this is terrible. All right.
I love it. Anyway, okay, so back to the crime. So basically now on Batman finds out there has not been one murder, but three. Okay.
Yes.
And so each of these people, this members of this group, have witnessed a different murder. And so the first guy describes being in a store and walking out and coming across the dead body of a woman. Okay. So a woman's lying there with red hair. Okay. So then the police come. The police, the EMS or whatever they call the paramedics, cover up her body, load it into the ambulance. Then, just as that's happening, a guy comes running down the street. You killed her. She's dead, and you killed her. There's all this commotion. There's fisticuffs, and then once the police subdue, oh no, they don't subdue the guy. The guy gets away.
Yeah.
So the guy gets away, and then everyone goes back to their business. They close up the door of the ambulance. They drive away. But when they get to the Gotham morgue, the woman's body is gone.
Yes.
Awesome mystery. Anyway, so I'm already sucked in, Mike Dell. Okay, I'm sucked in. Right? So now the next guy gives his he gives a separate murder. But here's the interesting thing: if you flip from the previous page to this page, it's very clear that this is I think it's the same drawing, just like photocopied
yeah,
or
I think so as well.
Whatever. Yep. Then. So this guy is coming out of an elevator and he comes across the dead body of a woman, but we can see that it looks to be the exact same woman, dressed the exact same way, red hair, everything. So she gets loaded. And by the way, if you're listening right now, I guarantee you're just as intrigued as I am. But anyway, so the girl gets loaded into the back of an ambulance. Then just after the body's loaded in, all of a sudden the power goes out on the street. Then after a few moments, the power comes back on. Everything's back to normal. The ambulance drives away. The ambulance gets to the Gotham morgue. No body. Okay? You with me, Mike Dell?
Oh, I'm with you.
Okay. So then now the third person, this is the girl. What's her name again? Faye K?
K Day, I believe.
K Day, okay. K Day, Faye K, whatever. So she is watching a movie. She's watching Murder on the Newark Express. And I guess
Michael, the key point is it's the movie premiere of one of her novels.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is the key to this whole thing. So then she looks down and there's a dead body in front of her in the theater in the exact same position at the exact same woman with the same outfit, same hair, everything. Yep. So police come, the police load the dead body into the back of the ambulance. Then just as they're doing that, an overweight woman in the crowd has a heart attack or an apparent heart attack. Yeah. Then they load the body back into the car. They get to the morgue. Actually, do they show that here? They kind of
I don't. Yeah, well, they just kind of.
Yeah, they kind of imply it, right?
Yeah.
So then the narrator says, "You gentlemen see a pattern developing," and then Batman says, "I noticed the pattern when Danton told me his story.
Yeah.
Obviously, during these disturbances, the real body was switched for a fake of some kind. See, I never would have guessed that, but I'm not the world's greatest detective, so it makes sense, right?"
Well, I knew it right away.
Well, that's the benefits of having the English degree, right?
Yes, and I write mysteries for a living, so I'll be able to break this down a little bit later. But
right. Do you actually write mysteries?
Yes, and I edit mysteries and I publish mysteries. I do it all.
I didn't know that. Okay.
19books.com, edit19.com, bookchimp.net. Go to all three of those.
All right. Okay. So this is all tired cliches to you.
No. This is fine. No problems here. But I just like how he said, I noticed the pattern. That second, okay, Batman, just calm down.
Okay.
You don't have to be bragging about it. So I'm sure everyone noticed. Yeah.
So except me. Okay. So then Batman shows how they now they go to the morgue and he shows how they faked showing the body underneath the blankets by showing these like razor thin metal kind of like wires that create the shape of a body, and then when you pull on them they just collapse. And I guess that's something that magicians use, right, to make it look like there's a body underneath a sheet or whatever.
Yeah. So Batman knows right away, we better go to this magician's club and
Right.
investigate.
The Magic Palace nightclub. Then, just as that happens, Batman looks over and sees someone standing in the doorway. And he's like, now, if you excuse me, we've got some uninvited company, someone I'd like to speak to. So he starts running after this guy. And there's not really much of a fight here other than that Batman, just as he's catching him, this guy throws some flash powder in his face and blinds him.
Yes.
Then the guy ends up getting away. And it's kind of funny because you see Batman standing in this awkward pose, clenching his fists in anger because he can't run after him.
Yeah, the guy's like 2 feet away from him.
Yeah. And so they decide to go to the club where all these magicians hang out at. Mm-hmm. And they start interrogating these people. And this is where it gets kind of tricky here because so this is where it gets confusing because this all depends on the color of people's shirts because it's a comic book. It's hard to tell people apart. But so he starts interrogating everybody. What's that?
It shouldn't be hard to tell people apart. If the art was a little better.
We'll talk about that later. Let's not skip ahead. So I assume that everyone's following along as they're listening, so they can see everyone's face here. I mean, they're distinct enough, but in any case, so he starts interrogating them. And basically, this one guy, what's his name? Bennett? Is it Bennett?
Martin Monroe, the apprentice.
Martin Monroe, right. So Martin, okay, so basically they say, so there's 3 people here. The young lady is Lisa Morrow. She isn't a magician.
The sultry psychic.
Right. She's a psychic, a friend of Glenn's. And then there's Glenn Falkenstein is one of the top mentalists in the business, mind reading, that sort of thing. And of course, Martin Monroe, one of our junior magicians, an apprentice of Mr. Hampton. So then Batman says, tell me, which one of you would have reason to kill June Gold? And then Monroe says, why, you vigilante? Who do you think you are asking a question like that? And then I love this part because then Commissioner Gordon says, he's an honorary police deputy, Mr. Monroe, and I am the police. Yeah, right. So then he cooperates because he realizes now, and this is a strange point in Batman history where, yes, Batman was actually deputized by the law, right? So this is a kind of a weird time. Yeah, just like in the TV show, in the old TV show, he was deputized. So it's kind of funny. But anyway, this guy does have an alibi. Someone saw him sitting in a restaurant while the murders were happening.
The taciturn manager saw him in the
taciturn manager, right, which we talked about what taciturn meant earlier. So he saw him. So this guy's clean, right? So then he's like, besides, if you want a motive for June's murder, ask Lisa or Glenn, right? So he throws the trail off him. Then he says, what about Hampton, Commissioner? He hated the girl, only kept her on because she was blackmailing him. Think it over. I must go now. I have things to do. So then Commissioner Gordon's like, see, this is what I mean. It's kind of hard to summarize. You kind of just got to, you might as well read the whole issue on the air, right?
It's not that hard to summarize.
So then, well, maybe if you were a writer, if you wrote mysteries like you do.
But what I like is, so then he goes looking at Glenn and the sultry psychic. And if you notice, Michael, on the top right panel of that one page there, right after he talks about the alibi for the other guy, if you look at the sultry psychic, she's not wearing pants.
Hold up. Which is this, page 12?
I never see page numbers on these.
Okay.
Page 11. Page 11. Top right panel. Like, it looks like she's dressed as like a magician's assistant or something. Like, she's not wearing pants and like looks like she has like stockings on. But she's just I don't know. She was just his friend. You know, she's not a magician's assistant. But I don't know.
Wait, how come I can't? What page? This is page, like, are you talking about the original comic page?
11.
11. Top right?
It's the panel right after they talk about him being in the bar as his alibi. The taciturn manager says, oh, I saw him in the bar.
Oh, yes. Now I see the fishnet stockings.
Yeah, she's like not wearing pants.
Yeah. I think that's just like, it's almost like Black Canary. It's like, it's like that's her magician's outfit, I think. I don't know.
But she's like not a performer. She's just kind of like Glenn's friend.
Hanging out?
Yeah, and she's not wearing pants.
Mm.
Maybe that's why she's sultry.
Could be.
Yeah. All right, anyway, go ahead.
So anyway, so back to this. So basically, so then Batman, he's got a hunch. So then he's like, excuse me, Commissioner, I have something special to attend to alone. So then he's like basically going off to follow his hunch, but then he gets knocked out.
Yeah, his hunch is that he saw Kay Day the best-selling mystery author, she's no longer with them. So he goes, I bet she snuck off to go investigate something. I better follow. And yeah, he gets knocked out by like a 2x4 to the back of the head. Right. What a great superhero this is.
Well, this was back in the days when Batman was not, he like this. Nowadays, this could never happen. Batman can beat any opponent. He knows every form of martial arts, right? Yeah. Back then, he was getting captured left and right, right? So this was common.
And that's look. We're like 12 pages into the story. He's already been hit in the face with a flash powder.
That's true. That's true.
And then knocked unconscious by a 2x4, just by average dudes.
Well,
not like the Riddler or the Joker. No, just average dudes.
See, I like heroes that have weaknesses, there's a chance that they can lose the fight. You know what I mean? So that's why I like this. So
that's fine if you're fighting someone, worth fighting. But, these are just dudes.
These are just magicians, yeah.
What the hell's going on?
So now Batman is tied up inside like a tank of water. And basically, here's the bad guy. Here's the bad guy. He's in shadow, so we don't know who it is. And he's basically explaining to Batman how he's going to die. And just as happened in the Mr. Miracle comic,
yes,
he's like, oh, I can't be bothered to stay and wait to watch you die. I'm just going to go take off. I got something else to do. So he's like, I have a performance to give you. See, the show must go on, but don't worry, I'll be back later to dispose of Miss Day. So then he just leaves him, right?
Yeah, because K-Day is tied up at the base of the tank.
Right. So now this is an interesting suspenseful sequence. Unfortunately, I got to admit, this is my least favorite part of the story because I would like to see Batman, use his brains to get out of this, but instead he just basically uses, he just breaks his way out by pressing on the glass, which isn't really much of an escape artist, if you ask me, but whatever, that's fine. So he breaks out, and then he goes out on stage and interrupts which magician? Oh, this is Martin Monroe. So he comes out, and he's like, "You're under arrest for murder one, but Batman, impossible." So then he knocks him out. So there you go. There's your fisticuffs for the issue, right? But then, of course,
he's Batman punching a magician's assistant, and he doesn't knock him out. Come on, you're Batman. Let's go.
Maybe he's supposed to be an average, sized, average strength guy at this point. Maybe he's not, the Ben Affleck Batman yet.
But they still draw him like he's real muscular. And this magician's assistant, like maybe $130, $140 tops.
Just making excuses here.
Yeah.
So he subdues him, and it's funny because the guy actually tries to fight him with that old trick of the jacket. What is that? A jacket full of what are those sparrows? What are the birds that magicians have?
Usually they're doves.
Oh, doves, right.
But yeah, they're painted yellow. So usually doves aren't yellow. Maybe they've just been in that coat a long time. And then he has more flash powder up his sleeve, and he like turns into fire and stuff. Oh, this magician's tricky.
Mm-hmm. So basically, he does the old punch him in the gut, knock the wind out of him trick, then uppercuts him in the jaw.
And look at the size of that arm on that uppercut.
Yeah, it's a good size arm.
It's enormous.
And then the guy almost thinks he's going to get his head cut off with a guillotine, but
this makes no sense. But he's a magician.
Yeah.
He's a magician. He knows it's not a real guillotine, yet he's terrified.
It's just like, it's like in the heat of the moment he forgot. That's what I think is happening.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
I guess.
Okay. See, you've written and read a lot of mystery novels. I've read a lot of comic books, okay? So I can explain to you how the logic works in comic books. This is how it works, okay? Just go with it. You just go with it. Okay. So then, now that he's been subdued, and again, we can tell these are two different guys because this guy has a blue shirt and the other guy has a kind of a purplish shirt, right? So
that's really the only way you could tell them apart.
That's true. This is true. So basically now we're going to wrap up the mystery, right? And we're going to see, because up until this point, Mike Dell, I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, how is Batman going to solve this crime? I have no clue. Okay, so if you're listening, audience, this is what happened, okay? I love it. So this guy, what is it, Monroe? He basically took the dead body of the girl, right?
Yep.
And he planted it in these 3 different scenes.
Yep.
Then he made the body disappear only because he knew that would attract the attention of Batman, so that he would investigate the murders and find out who was the culprit of the real murder.
Yes.
Isn't that awesome?
And apparently he showed up at their little meeting and got Batman to chase him to throw the flash powder in his face and escape, just so he could. Batman would realize he's not trying to hurt them. He's not trying to kill. He's not a killer.
That's right, and that's right. That's when he realized that he was part of it, sort of in on it. Like that guy was in on it. Yeah.
And Batman just says that he recognized them all along, even in the darkness, from his, his posters and stuff from the Magic Club. But we never see Batman see those posters. This is all just knowledge that Batman has that he doesn't share with the reader at all.
So it's kind of a cheat.
Yeah, it's
kind of a cheat. Okay,
not good.
I'll give you that. So then, basically, that's it. That's the end of the story.
Well, then they say, well, what about?
Oh, right.
His alibi, the bad guy's alibi, and Batman just says, "Oh, well, it was an illusion, and magicians never reveal their secrets, not even in prison." So. That's
right. So leave them wanting more, right?
This is terrible. No, Mike L.
Wanting more. Yep. Go ahead.
Is this what Batman was like back here? Like this kind of nonsense?
I can only say this. Okay, this was written by a certain Gerry Conway, who we only recently reviewed a story that he wrote. Right? We reviewed his issue of Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, which was great with Craven and the Gibbon.
Right. So here's the thing. I'm actually just going to jog ahead to the issue the issue after this, because I don't know who wrote it, but I'm just going to check right now.
It wasn't Conway.
No, it wasn't Conway. I know that, because this was like
Conway did 295. This is his first one, and then he didn't come back to Batman until 305 and 306.
Okay. So the next issue, I can only say that yes, this is probably what Batman was like at the time. Like the next issue was written by David V. Reed, who I've never even heard of. And then the issue before it, I don't know. I'm going to find out in a minute. But here's the thing is that it's safe to say Batman was pretty much like this at the time. It was
terrible.
Batman was somewhat, around the time of Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, they tried to make him, the Avenger of the Night and all that stuff. But even when you go back and read those stories, they're not great, right? And I think by this point, because what year is this? I don't even know what year. 78. So by this point, Batman was slowly creeping back to being the Adam West Batman, I think. And it wasn't really until there was definitely some good stories in this era, but it wasn't really until Frank Miller rebooted Batman in 86, right, that Batman became the Batman that we know today. So it was definitely time.
I don't mind the Adam West Batman, because you know why? He always fought supervillains, not just guys at a magic club.
Well, you can't have Joker and Penguin every issue, right?
No, you really can't, because he has like an enormous rogues gallery of villains,
I don't mind it, though. You could argue that this story, you could take Batman out and put any superhero in, right? You could argue that.
No, I don't think so, because this is a mystery and he is a detective, so it makes sense in that sense.
Okay.
But I think the problem is you see this great Batman matching wits with a couple of dopes from a magic club. Oh, we should say, by the way, the motive for the guy, why he killed the lady he killed was the main magician's assistant. And he tried to frame that main magician as the murderer so then he could take his job as the top magician.
Right.
So that was the motive for this nefarious crime. But now, Mike,
go ahead.
There's a big problem here with this plot.
What's that?
So we're supposed to believe that this Hampton guy, the main magician who was being framed, he sees the dead body of his lady friend, his assistant, and he's like, "Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this dead body, go around town, create 3 scenarios for these murder analysts of Gotham to attract their attention, and then I will pick up this dead body, steal it out of an ambulance, take it across to another part in town, drop it off, create this fiasco, this distraction, everything, wait for them to load it into the ambulance, steal this dead body out of the ambulance, carry it around town again, put it in a third spot, steal it out of the ambulance again." It's insanity.
A magician never gives away his tricks, okay? We don't know how he did it.
There's a dead body that you have to carry around to 3 different places. There is no trick. That's it. That's what you got to do. It just makes no sense.
Here's the thing. This is what I'll say about this story, is that if we accept that this was written for a younger audience, Like, what if this was in the form of a cartoon? Like, would you
It would
be
still be terrible.
No, stop.
This is brutal.
I
It's interesting to read this though, because you do get insight into why Batman was so bad and he needed to be like rejuvenated.
Rebooted?
Yeah, because this, I don't know why anyone would want to read this stuff.
But this is one issue by Gerry Conway. Like, it's not like Gerry Conway was the regular writer at that time, so we have no idea. Now, the fact that the writer before this and after this we haven't even heard of, David Reed, I mean, it probably wasn't much better, but
I think that clues you.
I've been reading a lot of Bronze Age comics lately, and at the very least, the reason I like this is because at least there is a mystery. It's not just fisticuffs, you know what I mean?
Do you want me to get into breakdown mystery plotting for you?
Go ahead.
How this works. All right. Now, the structure of the story is pretty good in terms of the mystery because it's only like 17 pages, so you can't do too much. But he broke it up into 3 chapters, and there are different ways you can plot a mystery. Some people do 3. I prefer to do a 4-arc structure for a mystery, but this is in 3. So basically, in the first arc or chapter in this one, you set the stage. You know, you reveal what the crime is, what has to be investigated. Then in the second chapter, you do the actual investigation. And then it ends on a low note for your hero. And then in the third arc, he comes and he beats the villain, you know. So that's basically what you're doing here. Now, I like to do a 4-arc structure.
Sure.
Where the first thing you do is you don't open, it's not an actual official part of the arc, you open with a hook.
Sure.
With a little hook, like 5 pages to catch the reader's attention. And you get that here in this issue where Batman's beating up those 3 criminals. That's your hook. So you get a little bit of that. Then your first arc is you introduce the scene, the characters, and you get your murder. Usually you find a dead body. So you know what the crime is. Now your protagonist or detective, he has to go and decide all right, I'm going to solve this case. The second arc is where he does his he starts the investigation, but things are pretty passive. He's just looking for clues. He's finding stuff out. He's interviewing people, but he's not really taking too much action yet. And then at the end of the arc 2, usually there's a second dead body, and that dead body will put the detective back to square one. Like he looked like he was looking in a certain direction, like, oh, this suspect might be it. And then usually that suspect ends up dead. So he's like, fuck, I got to start over.
Sure.
So then the third arc, the action picks up, it becomes more intense. Your detective becomes more proactive. He's out there doing stuff, getting stuff done. He's no longer following the book. He's working on his instincts, his gut feelings. But then at the end of the third act, Michael, your hero, your protagonist, your detective, he suffers a huge setback. And something where it's like, oh, all hope is lost. You know, it's like, oh, shit. And I guess in this thing, it's Batman being stuck in that water tank. Like, oh, no. You know, how do I get out of here? Then in the fourth and final arc, you have your hero muster all his forces. He comes together. He rises up. He solves the crime. He beats the villain. And then you end with a coda, with like a couple pages of just summarizing everything, explaining it, how he solved it, and that kind of thing. And then you send them all home happy. But that's the 4-arc structure of a mystery. Here, Gerry Conway is using a 3-arc structure just because of the limited page count. You know, you don't have a lot of room. But when you're watching mystery movies or TV shows, Michael, if you keep that in mind, you can usually figure out what's happening. You know, like you'll see oh, well, yeah, this is what's going on here, and oh, that guy's got to be the killer. But keep that 4-arc structure in mind when you're watching that stuff, and it'll help you out.
Oh, well, I mean, I haven't studied mysteries specifically, but I've definitely studied screenplays and story structure. So I know what you mean. Like, you can see, especially nowadays in Hollywood, you can see, like, the formulas, right? Like, as you're watching, you're like, oh, okay, so this is where, you know, the hero does something that's going to get him, that's going to cause him this to happen or whatever. You can see it coming because it's like they're just checklisting, right?
Yeah, but that's the great thing about mysteries is it is very formulaic, but the genius comes in making it seem like it's not.
Sure, yeah.
Putting a new spin on each one. So people say, oh, it's so restrictive, but actually it leads to more creativity if you're stuck inside a box. You got to figure out ways to do things, you know, so I like about the mysteries. But yeah, so this is a pretty standard structure for a mystery, but again, because of the limited space, you can't really do too much. But so in that sense, it was all right. All right.
Well, that's the thing is that I get more like I said, I've been reading tons of Bronze Age comics lately, and I love them all. But I see more like don't get me wrong, I understand that the premise is ridiculous. Like the actual believability of how he could pull this off is preposterous. But I guess I appreciate the fact that there even is a mystery versus most of the comics where I'm reading where, what is really the story? There's not, like, for example, the Fantastic Four with the golden gorilla.
The big monkey.
Yeah, the big monkey. That was brutal. It's like, now I know why I never read, like, that's why everyone comes down on the era in between Kirby and John Byrne, right? And now I understand why. It's like, well, how come I never read those? Now I know why. Because if they're all like that, it's kind of the same thing, I guess you're saying about this.
Don't distract from the garbage that is Batman by bringing in a big monkey story.
Oh, you got me. You got me. Okay, so let me ask you this. What story was better? The Amazing Spider-Man by Gerry Conway that we read, or this Batman comic by Gerry Conway?
The Spider-Man by leaps and bounds. It had Craven the Hunter and Gibbon. It was amazing.
And the Gibbon. Always the Gibbon.
You actually think this is better than that Spider-Man we did?
I enjoyed the other one more, but I think this has a better story.
No.
I think so.
No way.
Okay. So,
all right, let's talk Gerry Conway.
Sure.
We already broke him down when we did that Spider-Man issue, so we don't have to get into all that again.
Sure.
But this was he was 26 years old here.
Wow.
In 78, and this was after the Spider-Man run and all that. He left Marvel when he came to DC. And this was the first issue of Batman he ever wrote. He did 25 issues total from 1978 to 1983. And he did 30 issues of Detective Comics from 76 to 83. So he does have a history here with Batman. He created Killer Croc and Jason Todd.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I was reading, Michael, people were saying they were crediting Gerry Conway with Marvelizing Batman. Because apparently this first issue, this was basically standard for this era. Batman they'd be all self-contained one-issue stories.
Okay.
There'd be a problem. Batman would solve it by the end. And this is a perfect example of that. But I guess in his later work, like we said, he came back 10 issues later to do 2 issues. And then there was like another 8 or 10 issue span where he wasn't around. And then he came back for maybe 9 issues or so. He had 2 pretty extended runs. But in those extended runs, he made it more like Marvel with more subplots.
Right.
The stories would go over many issues. There would be arcs that would span many issues, not just be wrapped up in one. So people seem to enjoy that aspect of it. Did you read more Gerry Conway later?
Yes, I read, and I believe those were the ones drawn by people like Gene Colan and Don Newton.
Yes.
And I remember, I think it even crossed back and forth between Batman and Detective, if I remember correctly. But I did really enjoy those. Yeah, that was when, like, there was all these running subplots. Like, that's when Jason Todd was introduced. And that's when, I think that was when he wasn't in the Batcave. Wasn't he in the Wayne Wayne Tower or whatever, that weird building with, like, the tree in the middle or whatever? Anyway, I don't even know what I'm talking about. But, yeah, I remember really liking them, yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's...
maybe we'll have to cover one of those later. But anyway.
Can't wait.
All right, you'll see. You're in for it.
A building with a tree in it. I'm excited now. Anything else about Gerry Conway and Batman that comes to mind?
Not really. Other than, he definitely didn't write Batman after the Frank Miller reboot, so it's definitely a product of, pre-crisis DC continuity. So, but I think it's good stuff. So I highly recommend it.
From what I was gathering, this era, Gerry Conway's era, was kind of referred to as the forgotten era of Batman because, like you said, it came before Frank Miller,
right,
and after he was very popular. So I kind of forget. And I think if this, well, I don't want to judge Gerry Conway's work on Batman from this issue because I'm sure it's much different than what this was. So.
Yeah, he's probably writing according to the formula of the day, and also it was Julius Schwartz who's. He's a 60s editor, so he was probably writing in that style. But
and again, this is his first issue on the book, and it's right in the he's not a continual run. It's just one issue dropped in the middle, so he had to do whatever they were doing. So I'm not going to judge Conway on this, although I think we could judge his dialogue if we look at
yeah, it's not spectacular.
there's a couple things I want to mention here. Well, we already talked about the thing on the cover, but we can't blame him for that because I'm sure. But on page 2, we got the crooks,
right?
The 3 crooks. We got the cash. We're just about home free. With those alarm circuits cut, ain't no way no cop's going to catch us tonight. Man, we are winners. And then the next panel, wrong, losers.
Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad. Anyway, I can't make excuses for that. It's terrible.
And then just the way they introduced the crime analysts of Gotham Club, and the way Batman's just kind of standing there with his arm on the dude's shoulder, and it's just some of the things he's saying here. It's pretty stiff and awkward. But yeah, whatever. It is what it is. It's 1978. What the hell? What can you do? So there you go, Gerry Conway. All right, Michael.
Okay.
The artwork.
Yes.
Michael Golden. Now,
yes.
I was unfamiliar with Michael Golden. When you mentioned him last week, I was like, yeah, I don't remember. But then when you mentioned some of his credits, and when I saw his art here, I'm like, oh, this looks vaguely familiar. But this is his first comic book work. This is his first issue with DC. He started out in commercial art, and he entered comics in 1977 at the age of 22. And he only did one other Batman issue. That was issue 303. His biggest runs in the comic book business were Micronauts 1 through 12 in 1979. And that's what I remember. I remember the Micronauts. Now, explain the Micronauts to people, Michael, who may not remember.
Micronauts was a toy line that basically Marvel had the license to. And so it's kind of like Transformers and G.I. Joe. They were tasked with creating a backstory. So they're kind of just, it's hard to explain what they are, but they're this mismatched group of, people or aliens or whatever. And the backstory is that they exist in this microscopic universe.
Yes.
And I think the reason that they call them Micronauts is because I think the original idea is that the characters were supposed to be the size that they were in the toy or something. I think that might have been the original explanation. But then in the comic, it was, no, they're actually like microscopic. And then when they come to our world, they grow to become our size, right?
Something like that.
Yeah. It's almost like, and there's like the bad guy is kind of Darth Vader-esque. He's got like this funky kind of armor look to him. I don't really know much about them, but I do know that it was a long-running series, maybe 60 issues. Then there was a second volume for like 20 or 30 issues, I think. And some of like whatever elements of the continuity that Marvel created or Bill Mantlo created, Marvel kept, like the dire wraiths, I think, and a few other things. Like Marvel has kept those things around and used them in their other comics. But once Marvel lost the license, now I don't think they can even reprint those Micronaut comics. So there's really no way to get them other than if you get them in back issue bins. But it was a good selling comic at the time, but it wasn't really respected. But I think nowadays it's because of the internet, it's kind of grown like a cult following. That's pretty much all I know about it.
And the only Micronauts I had was they did a crossover with the X-Men. And
that's right.
X-Men and the Micronauts. And I can't remember anything about that story because I thought I didn't like it, I guess.
Okay,
but I did have it. And like we said, that was in 1979. That all happened, the Micronauts 1 through 12. And then he did the NOM, or the NAM, depending on how you want to say it, 1 to 11, and then issue 13, and that was 1986 to 87. And the NAM actually was the basis for the TV show Tour of Duty.
Come on. Is that true?
Yeah, because right before the show, I was watching a little video with Michael Golden. He was giving a talk at a comic book, and he was just going through his resume, and he said, yeah, it became the basis for Tour of Duty, the TV show.
How the heck did I not know that? Wow, okay.
How about that? So,
yeah. Interesting.
He did a lot of cover work. Probably did more covers than interior work. Because really, Micronauts and the NOM, that was basically his longest runs on any book. He would do sporadic issues here and there, but those were his two lengthiest runs. But he did a lot of covers for Detective Comics, Nightwing, G.I. Joe, Punisher War Journal, She-Hulk, a bunch of other stuff. A lot of covers.
And they're honestly, there's a lot of them are stunning because he got into a phase where he was painting everything, and I think the art is just absolutely stunning if you've never seen it.
He also did Transformers #2, the cover for that, Michael. So you must be excited about that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
He also created Bucky O'Hare with Larry Hama.
Yep, I've got a collection of that.
Really? Well, explain Bucky O'Hare for people.
Oh, boy. I don't know anything about it because I've never had the heart to crack the cover. I don't know anything about it. I just bought it because it was Michael Golden, so I can't help you there.
Wow. Well, it's a green rabbit, and he's like from outer space or something, and him and his animal buddies are fighting some other group of like some world run by computers or something.
Okay.
That's Bucky O'Hare. And then he also he drew Avengers Annual 10, and that's significant because he co-created Rogue with Chris Claremont.
That's right.
So that's pretty good. I think he was in the early 90s. He was like a DC special events editor or something like that, a special projects editor.
Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
And then at the end of the 90s, he was Marvel's senior art director.
That's right. Which is a position that John Romita Sr. held for years, and I don't think Michael Golden lasted long in that position, did he?
He didn't say.
Okay, I don't think he lasted long, and honestly, I don't even know if that position exists now. But in any case, I think he'd be perfect for it, though, personally. But whatever.
And again, I don't want to be too critical of his art here. He's 22, 23, and it's his first issue of Batman, first work in comics. So it is what it is. You know, you can see there's stuff there that's potential, but I really wasn't too fond of it. I know they say he influenced Arthur Adams, and I think you mentioned that last week.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think looking at this issue, Michael, right away, first page, as soon as I open it, I'm like, oh, this looks like Alan Davis. You know
what's funny? I noticed that too, and I've never ever seen Alan Davis in his work, but especially when you just look at Batman, right?
But even like the faces, the spacing of some of the faces, and this really looks like Alan Davis to me.
I mean, I think Alan Davis was a little bit later, so maybe Alan Davis was influenced by his inking style, but I think that Alan Davis's figures are more, I guess you could say, graceful and.
Oh yeah. There's no comparing this issue with anything Alan Davis, but you can see hints of Alan Davis.
Right.
How you draw some hands, some faces, and I did a search. I searched for Alan Davis influenced by Michael Golden, and nothing came up. So I don't know.
Well, it's just like McFarlane. It's like when I first saw Michael Golden, I was like, oh, that's. I mean, I think I saw Michael Golden first, but when I went back and looked at his stuff, I saw a lot of McFarlane, there.
I didn't notice McFarlane right away, but then now that you mention it, looking back, like when you see that guy running away from Batman.
Yep.
It definitely looks like McFarlane.
Or even sorry, go ahead.
Well, because the anatomy isn't exactly, because McFarlane was never great with anatomy either, even in his heyday. Faces would look like they're made of putty sometimes, like, you know what I mean? Like, so I get that sense here. You can detect some of that here.
Well, even like for me, it was, the scene of the ambulance driving into the shot, the first murder you see, that to me looks like McFarlane. Just like this sort of overemphasis on drawing the lights flashing and stuff like that. Just those little flourishes is something that McFarlane would do.
All right.
And the thing is that I do love Michael Golden, but as the years have gone by, I realized I think I like his covers more than his interior art because he doesn't really have a comic background, and I think his storytelling is probably not as good as most professional artists.
Yeah, and again, this is his first issue, so I don't want to be too harsh. But there were some panels where it's like, it seemed like the dialogue didn't actually, or the dialogue had to cover up for a gap in the art, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Like explaining something you couldn't figure out by looking at the art. Yeah.
Yes.
And also and this is something, now I met Chris Sprouse many times. Are you familiar with Chris Sprouse?
I am not.
Okay, so he is one of my favorite artists. And when I met him, I found out that Michael Golden was his favorite artist as well. And so one thing Chris Sprouse said is that Michael Golden's people are not attractive. Like if you look at these figures, they're like, he doesn't give a shit if these people look good. Whereas like say John Romita, the women are beautiful, the men are all handsome. But if you look at these figures, it's like he doesn't care. It's like you said, they're all grotesque. Like a
lot of the faces, they look unfinished.
Right.
like that young, the sultry psychic. You look at her. Look at the space between her eyes. Like there's.
On like the opening page, you mean?
And just any of, but
yeah.
Especially the one backstage where they go to the club. There's at least 3 eye widths between her eyes.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad, and a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of the main guy and the apprentice look very similar, and unless you can just tell them apart because of the different colored shirts, you know. So yeah. I
think the other thing too is I think the key thing with him is his sense of design. Like even if you look at it's one of the early pages. Oh yeah, okay. So when Batman first jumps onto those hoodlums, right? When they're the 3 guys with the guns, you notice like the 3rd panel when he grabs that one guy and the guy drops the gun. Like if you look at the way his cape sort of you're looking at that, the way it wraps up, and then there's like black underneath. You see that? Like that's something that McFarlane absolutely imitated, but he never. But when McFarlane did it, the cape didn't look like it could exist in real 3-dimensional space, whereas this does, you know?
Yeah.
So, but then,
no.
But then you look at the bottom panel, and it's just that shot of Batman turning and looking at Commissioner Gordon. It just looks so awkward. You know what I mean?
Commissioner Gordon's beckoning him.
Yeah, like it's such an awkward. Yeah, like I don't know. I guess my guess is that this seems like a guy that probably was not a comics fan. Like most comic book artists, you know, they grow up reading, or you know, it's like, oh, well, my favorite artist is Jack Kirby or Jim Lee, so I'm going to draw like them. But this guy just seems like he just came out of commercial art, and he just happened to be able to draw well enough to do comics, but he doesn't have a comics background. So it's almost like he's just learning as he goes, you know? Yeah,
and I believe I read that at one point he said, now who knows if he still feels this way or not, but he said he enjoyed commercial art more than comics.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
He doesn't and I've met him several times. He doesn't seem to have a real passion for comics or superheroes.
No, like just the little video I watched before the show, he seemed very in tune with business and making money, and not so much he didn't really care too much, it seemed, about comics or creating art for comics. He just wanted those checks to cash. That seemed to be all he cared about. So
I don't want to sabotage any future interviews I might do with him, so I'm not going to comment, but you might be right.
But like, I guess the best way to describe this art in here is maybe unfinished, or it almost looks like it needs another work, like another revision. Like if you look at page 11, I don't know if you still have the book open, Michael.
Yeah.
But it's right after the taciturn manager. It talks about the alibi. So the 4th panel, it's a good shot of Batman, a really good shot of Batman. But then, like, you look at the logo on his chest, it's very small. It's not even centered, you know?
Yeah. Yep. That's a good point.
But otherwise, that's a great shot of Batman. But that's the kind I'm talking about. Like the little details, like even the faces, like it almost looks like, I'll just scribble this in here. I'll just do this. Who cares if it looks good? I'll just put it in there, and I don't know. Whatever. So not a fan of this. But again, it's his first work, so what can you say? You know, cut him some slack.
Like look at page 12 when Batman's underwater in the water tank, like the second panel there.
Yeah.
That to me is a great shot. Like you see like the water, you know, bisecting his, you know, half of his face, and then just like the muscle all looks right. Like everything looks good there, I think.
The stuff from the water tank when he's escaping, that's the best stuff in this book.
Yeah.
Art-wise.
Yeah, like look, even below that, when he's holding his breath, look at his face, how good it looks. But then if you go to the top left panel, what the hell is that, eh? Like, that looks like garbage. Like, I don't know if that's intentional because of distortion of the water, but it doesn't look good at all, so I don't know.
I don't know, but I think the big problem here were the faces. That's really, especially the women. They were not looking attractive at all. And then the big arm when he punches the guy. That is an enormous arm.
I'm looking at that right now.
It's just, but again, who cares? I don't want to get too caught up in anatomy. Like,
sure.
Oh, it's got to be perfect. The big thing is the emotion it inspires, sure. And so who cares? But whatever. All right, so there it is, Michael Golden. Anything else you want to say about Michael Golden? You're a big fan. So what's your favorite Michael Golden work?
Well,
do you have a memorable cover?
Oh, well, his G.I. Joe covers. So if for anyone who's read G.I. Joe, you'll know these covers, but the famous one of, I believe it's Clutch and Roadblock. They've just arrested Cobra Commander.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see? That's
a
one.
very famous cover, yeah.
Yes, it's a great one. There's another one, not as famous, but it's Destro. He's sort of sitting in one of those Cobra vehicles or tanks, and he's shooting. And it's kind of hard to describe. It's not nearly as memorable, but it's kind of like a battle scene, but it's really well done. The other really famous one he did was he did the cover and the back cover and the interiors of G.I. Joe Yearbook #2. And I don't know if you remember this, but the cover, oh geez, the cover was not as famous as the back because the back cover was like a pinup shot of Cobra.
All right, yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah.
Oh, isn't it beautiful? Like, I'm not sure if it was Yearbook #1 or #2 that had that, but you can see it right now. Like, yeah, because G.I. Joe Yearbook #1 was him. It was them all standing in front of the Sky Striker, and Yearbook #2 was a shot of Roadblock at Snake Eyes. Who is that? Torpedo, Lady J, and Ripcord all shooting, and it's just a great shot. And if you, I think the back cover of that one is the Cobra shot. Yeah, no, sorry. G.I. Joe Yearbook #1 has the Cobra pose on the back. That, to me, that's Michael Golden at his peak right there. That's just perfect, you know? Their poses, the color, the muscles, everything. I love it.
Yeah, it just got a big Cobra emblem in the middle, and they're posed beneath it, and then you got like the different airplanes and helicopters and stuff up above it. Yeah, it's very good.
It's excellent. And G.I. Joe Yearbook #2, he did the interiors, and that's probably my favorite interiors that he did.
And the cover on G.I. Joe Yearbook #2 is excellent as well.
Yeah. And also I should point out, it's probably not available online, but if you get a chance to look at the inside of G.I. Joe Yearbook #2, it's actually the basis for the first appearance of Cable by Rob Liefeld.
Really?
Yeah, if you you'd have to Google Cable Roadblock, and you can see the side-by-side shot. And it's obviously a swipe. He basically just what's his name? Liefeld just copied and pasted, basically. You know, pretty brutal. And then and it's funny because then if you flip the inside of G.I. Joe Yearbook #2, there's a pinup of the October Guard, and he copied that image for a poster he did of, I think, X-Force. So he basically just kept going back to this same issue over and over again to just swipe all the images, you know?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Oh, I see you sent it to me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely swiped it.
Yeah.
What a bum. All right, so there you go. Yeah, at least since we're doing Bronze Age, we won't get into Liefeld.
Well, he did start late 80s, 88, 89, so you never know, Mike, though.
Really?
You never know.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. So there it is, Batman 295 from 1978. 1 out of 10, Michael.
Woo. Okay, I'll be honest. I'll give it a 6. I'll give it a 6.
Wow.
Yeah. What do you give it?
I'll be generous and I'll give it a 3.
Okay.
Just because I like the fact that it was at least structured as a mystery, you know,
Sure.
and I like mysteries, so I'll give it a point for that, and I'll give it a point for, you know, I don't know, a water tank. I don't know.
There you go. Well deserved.
Yeah, I swear to God, Mike, if we get one more book with the Houdini water torture tank trick, I'm done.
I'm going to go out of my way to find one. Just to put us both out of our misery.
So, Batman. I know we're going to have more Batman issues in the future, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Let's pick a good one. You know, let's find a good one.
Let's see what I can do.
All right. Well, next week, Michael, I believe we will have a guest on the show.
Okay.
And it'll be another. We'll keep it a surprise. But the issue we'll be doing is Incredible Hulk 334 from 1987, I believe.
334. All right. Perfect.
And that is written by Peter David and drawn by Todd McFarlane.
Yes, that was my absolute favorite Hulk team.
Those are two people we have not discussed here on the show in depth. So we will be. I've never really read Peter David.
Get out of town, really.
I mean, I guess I read that issue of the Hulk with Wolverine where he fights Wolverine.
Oh, yeah.
But other than that, I really can't think of anything I've read by Peter David. So this will be interesting for me to learn about Peter, because I know you're a big fan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Huge fan. So why did you pick this issue?
He picked it. At first, he was going to do something from Spider-Man, but I was like, but then he mentioned the Hulk, and I'm like, yeah, we haven't done a Hulk issue, so do Hulk. So we were looking for something in the '70s, but he had never read any of that stuff. So I'm like, oh, he liked the Peter David run, so I'm like, all right, well, that's fine. Pick something from there, and he wanted to go for a self-contained story.
Gotcha.
Because he said most of them were like continuing long stories, and I guess. Sure. 333 and 334 were like self-contained, so he went with 334.
Interesting. Okay.
So there you go.
Perfect. Looking forward to it because I'm in the middle of reading the Peter David run right now. So
yeah, there we go.
All right. So I guess that wraps up this week's episode of Flea Market Fantasy. As we always say, please feel free to share your comments on YouTube or Facebook or Spotify. I don't think there's a way to share comments on Spotify, is there?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. But if you do want to share comments, feel free to email us at mail@comicbooksyndicate.com and let us know what you think of our reviews. Let us know what you think of the comics we're reviewing. And I guess that's about it. You got anything else to say, Mike Dell?
No. Thanks for asking.
Okay, there you go, folks. So until next Tuesday night, this has been Flea Market Fantasy. See you next time.